Marcus Mac Thompson had exactly 17 minutes left in what was supposed to be the most important diplomatic translation of his career before he accidentally started a galactic war. Not that he knew it at the time, of course. He was too busy trying to figure out why the Crethani ambassador had suddenly turned the color of an angry eggplant. "What did you just say to him?" Ambassador Valara hissed through her translator, all 6 of her arms flailing in what Mac had learned was the universal gesture for "you absolute moron." Mac glanced down at his notes, then back at the towering, purple-scaled Crethani delegate, who was now making sounds like a garbage disposal eating a chainsaw. "I said, may your offspring multiply like the stars, which is a traditional blessing in their culture." "No, Mac. No, you absolutely did not." Valara's eye stalks were doing that twitchy thing that meant someone was about to get fired. "You just told him his children should be scattered across the void and left to die cold and alone." The Crethani ambassador stood up, all 9 feet of him, and began what sounded like the galaxy's most aggressive poetry recital. Mac didn't need a translator to know this wasn't going well. "Right. So that's bad," Mac said, loosening his tie. The annual Intergalactic Peace Summit on Station Harmony was supposed to be a cakewalk. Smile, translate, don't accidentally insult anyone's reproductive methods. Simple. Within the next 3 minutes, the Crethani Empire had formally declared war on the peaceful collective of herbivorous philosophers, the Meditation Federation, and the Society of Cosmic Huggers. 3 species whose idea of violence was refusing to say please when asking for the salt. Thompson. Ambassador Valara's voice could have stripped paint. "My office. Now." The office was a testament to bureaucratic excess, with filing cabinets that reached the ceiling and a desk large enough to land a small shuttle. Valara didn't even sit down before she started in on him. 5 years, Mac? 5 years you've been the best human translator in the diplomatic corps. I've watched you navigate trade disputes with species that communicate through interpretive dance. I've seen you mediate territorial conflicts between beings made of pure energy. And now, at the most important peace summit in galactic history, you decide to tell a warlike empire that their children should be turned into cosmic dust. Max slumped into the chair across from her desk. "In my defense, Crethani has 17 different words for multiply, and I picked the wrong one. You picked the one that means scatter to the winds of space while screaming in terror. Yeah, that's definitely the wrong one." Valara's translator buzzed as she switched to what Mac recognized as her native language's equivalent of very creative swearing. Then she took a deep breath and fixed him with a look that could have melted steel. "You're fired." "Come on, Valara. Everyone makes mistakes. Remember when Ambassador Clix accidentally declared war on his own planet's moon? That was different. He was drunk on fermented space kelp. You were stone-cold sober and somehow managed to destabilize 3 star systems with a greeting card sentiment." She pressed a button on her desk. "Security will escort you to clear out your office. Try not to accidentally declare war on the janitor on your way out." An hour later, Mac was sitting in his tiny archive office, stuffing his personal belongings into a box that had previously held Galactic Standard emergency rations. The irony wasn't lost on him that he'd need emergency rations after this career disaster. He was pulling his collection of ancient language dictionaries off the shelf when something fell from behind them. A small, crystalline datapad, covered in dust and inscribed with symbols he'd never seen before. Mac picked it up, and the moment his fingers touched the surface, it hummed to life, displaying text in a script that looked like someone had sneezed in calligraphy. "Well," he said to the empty office, "at least unemployment comes with mysterious ancient artifacts. That's something, I guess." He slipped the datapad into his pocket just as security arrived to escort him off the station. As the doors closed behind him, Mac couldn't shake the feeling that getting fired might have been the best thing that ever happened to him. He was, as usual, spectacularly wrong about everything. Mac's temporary lodging was a freight compartment on docking level C that smelled like old socks and broken dreams. The kind of place where disgraced diplomats went to contemplate their life choices while eating synthetic noodles that tasted like regret. He'd been staring at the mysterious datapad for 6 hours, trying to make sense of the swirling symbols that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. The text was definitely a language, but unlike anything in his considerable database of galactic dialects. Troubles with the mysterious glowing rectangle? Meatbag? Mac looked up to see a maintenance bot hovering in his doorway. The bot was small, roughly the size of a briefcase, with mismatched repair patches and what appeared to be googly eyes stuck to its optical sensors. "Did you just call me Meatbag?" Mac asked. "Solid, Chief. Real solid. Name's Pip, and I'm the grooviest maintenance bot this side of the spiral arm. And watching you mope around with that ancient doodad, and frankly, it's bumming out my circuits." Mac blinked. "Did you just say groovy?" "Language programming got a little scrambled during my last update. Now I talk like a human from your planet's disco era, Daddy-O. But I know old languages like nobody's business. Got to. For maintenance records going back millennia." Pip bobbed closer to examine the datapad. "Far out, man. That's some prehistoric script you got there. Can you read it?" "Can I read it?" "Jack, I can read scripts so old they make the universe feel young. This here's ancient primordial. The first universal language, used by the builders before they vanished into whatever cosmic retirement home exists for godlike beings." Mac sat up straighter. "The builders? I thought they were just a myth." "Oh, they were real as real gets, cat. Built most of the Jumpgate network, seeded half the galaxy with life, and then split faster than a bad drummer leaving a jazz club." Pip's optical sensors focused on the datapad. "This particular piece of ancient jive is talking about something called the Ghost Fleet." "Ghost Fleet?" "Fleet of ships that supposedly vanished 10,000 years ago. Legend says they were hidden away to prevent some cosmic catastrophe, waiting for the right person to wake them up. Most folks think it's space fairy tales, but this datapad's got coordinates, star charts, and what looks like an activation sequence." Mac's pulse quickened. "What kind of ships?" "The kind that could glass a planet or tickle it to death, depending on your mood. We're talking about the most advanced fleet in galactic history, just floating out there in the cosmic deep, waiting for someone to whisper the magic words." Before Mac could respond, the compartment door burst open. A woman in a battered flight jacket stepped in, weapon drawn, looking like she'd been having an even worse day than Mac. "Step away from the bot. Translate, boy. I'm commandeering this ship." "This isn't a ship," Mac said. "It's a storage compartment. Also, who are you?" The woman lowered her weapon slightly. "Captain Zara Voss, formerly of the Galactic Defense Force, currently of the unemployment line. And if this isn't a ship, why am I reading engine signatures from this location?" Pip bobbed excitedly. "Oh, that's because this whole compartment is actually a diplomatic courier ship in disguise. The Olive Branch, if memory serves. Pretty slick setup, really." Mac looked around his lodging with new eyes. The walls were a little too smooth, the floor had subtle vibration patterns, and now that he thought about it, the window showing the docking bay had been displaying the same view for hours. "You've been living in a ship," Zara said, holstering her weapon, "on a station where ship theft is punishable by being launched out of an airlock. That's either very stupid or very convenient." "I'm going with convenient," Mac said, standing up and showing her the datapad. "How do you feel about legendary lost fleets and potentially universe-changing discoveries?" Zara's eyes narrowed. "I feel like you're about to propose something that'll get us both killed." "The Ghost Fleet, sweetheart," Pip chimed in. 10,000 ships, advanced beyond anything the galaxy's ever seen, just waiting for someone to find them. And Mac here might be the only person who can read the treasure map." "There's treasure involved?" Zara asked. "Potentially," Mac said. "Also potentially cosmic responsibility for the fate of all sentient life in the galaxy. But definitely treasure." Zara was quiet for a long moment, then shrugged. "Well, I was just going to steal this ship and become a smuggler anyway. Finding a legendary fleet sounds more interesting than hauling black market cheese across the neutral zone." "So we're partners?" Mac asked. "We're partners until I figure out whether you're lying, crazy, or both. Pip, can you get this ship moving without triggering every security alert on the station?" "Can I get this ship moving? Baby, I was born to be wild and mechanical." "Buckle up, cats. because we're about to take the most unauthorized joyride in galactic history. As the hidden engines of the olive branch hummed to life, Mac felt a familiar sensation in his stomach. It was the same feeling he'd had right before mistranslating that greeting to the Crithani ambassador. The feeling that he was about to change everything, probably in the worst possible way. 3 days into their journey to the coordinates specified in the ancient datapad, Mac had learned several important things about his new companions. Zara Voss could pilot a ship through an asteroid field while eating a sandwich and insulting the parentage of space pirates. Pip had apparently been programmed with the complete cultural history of humanity's 1970s and wouldn't stop trying to start disco parties during hyperspace jumps. "Are we there yet?" Pip asked for the 14th time in an hour. "If you ask that question again," Zara said from the pilot's seat, "I'm going to reprogram you to speak only in funeral dirges." "That's harsh, Mama. Real harsh." Mac looked up from the datapad, which he'd been studying obsessively since they'd left Station Harmony. The ancient script was starting to make sense, revealing layers of meaning that seemed to change based on how he approached the translation. "We should be coming up on the coordinates now," he said. "But according to this, the fleet isn't just hidden in space. It's hidden in a pocket dimension that can only be accessed by speaking the activation phrase in ancient primordial." "And you can do that?" Zara asked, dropping them out of hyperspace. Mac looked out the viewport at what appeared to be completely empty space. Not even cosmic dust. Just the kind of void that made you question your life choices and wonder if the universe was having a laugh at your expense. "I think so. The phrase is something like, 'By the authority of the star seeds, I call upon the guardians of the final peace to wake from their eternal vigilance.'" "That's either really profound or really pretentious," Zara observed. "Why not both?" Mac cleared his throat and began to speak in ancient primordial. The words felt strange on his tongue, like they were reshaping themselves as he spoke them. The syllables seemed to resonate through the ship's hull, creating harmonics that made his teeth ache. For a moment, nothing happened. Then space itself began to ripple. "Okay," Zara said, gripping the controls tighter. "That's not normal." The ripples spread outward from their position, and suddenly the empty void wasn't empty anymore. Ships began to materialize, massive vessels that dwarfed anything Mac had ever seen. They stretched for kilometers in every direction, their hulls gleaming with an inner light that suggested technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. "Sweet dancing galaxies," Pip whispered. "That's not a fleet. That's a floating civilization." At the center of the formation, the largest ship began to move. It was less like a vessel, and more like a small moon that someone had decided to make really, really intimidating. As it approached, Mac could see weapon systems that looked like they could crack planets and sensor arrays that probably knew what he'd had for breakfast 3 weeks ago. A voice filled their ship, speaking in perfect galactic standard, but with the kind of authority that suggested it was used to being obeyed by entire star systems. "Greetings, Translator. I am Admiral Nexus, consciousness of the flagship Eternal Harmony, speaking for the Ghost Fleet. We have waited 10,000 years for your arrival." "10,000 years?" Mac squeaked. That's a really long time to wait for anything." "Indeed. Though I must say your timing is impeccable. The galaxy appears to be descending into chaos once again, and the Crithani Empire has begun their expansion exactly as the builders predicted they would." Zara shot Mac a look. "The builders predicted the war you accidentally started?" "It would appear," Admiral Nexus continued, "that Marcus Thompson's linguistic error was not an accident, but a fulfillment of ancient prophecy. The builders foresaw that the final conflict would begin with a mistranslation that would awaken the Ghost Fleet." "So I was supposed to mess up that badly?" Mac asked. "You were supposed to mess up exactly that badly, in exactly that way, at exactly that time. The builders were very thorough in their predictions." Pip's optical sensors were spinning wildly. "Far out, man. You're telling me Mac here is some kind of chosen one?" "He is the chosen translator, last descendant of the linguistic bloodline that helped hide the Ghost Fleet. His genetic code carries the resonance patterns necessary to command our vessels." Mac felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. Command your vessels? I can barely command a cup of coffee to not be terrible. Nevertheless, the authority is yours by right of birth and prophecy. The Ghost Fleet awaits your orders, Translator. We have slept long enough. The galaxy burns, and we are the only force capable of restoring balance. Through the viewport, Mac could see thousands of ships beginning to power up, their hulls glowing brighter as ancient systems came online. Each vessel was unique, some sleek and elegant, others blocky and utilitarian, but all of them radiated the kind of power that could reshape the political landscape of the entire galaxy. There's just one small problem, Admiral Nexus added, almost as an afterthought. What's that? Mac asked, though he was pretty sure he didn't want to know. The fleet's command systems only respond to orders given in ancient primordial. And as you are the only living being capable of speaking that language fluently, you will need to personally direct every aspect of our operations. Mac looked at Zara, who was grinning like someone who'd just won the lottery while watching her enemies step on rakes. So let me get this straight, she said. Mac here just inherited the most powerful fleet in galactic history, but only he can tell them what to do, and he has to do it in a dead language that he learned from a mysterious datapad he found behind some dictionaries. That is correct, Admiral Nexus confirmed. And this is the same guy who accidentally started a galactic war by mistranslating a greeting card. Also correct. Zara's grin widened. This is going to be the most entertaining disaster in the history of the galaxy. Mac buried his face in his hands. I should have stayed in that storage compartment. The command center of the Eternal Harmony was the size of a small city, and it apparently designed by someone who thought subtlety was for species without proper appreciation for cosmic grandeur. Holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the Ghost Fleet, while ancient primordial text scrolled across surfaces that seemed to be made of crystallized starlight. Mac stood in the center of it all, feeling like a child who'd been handed the controls to a nuclear reactor and told to just figure it out. The genetic resonance is strong in this one, Admiral Nexus observed, his voice emanating from speakers that were somehow embedded in the walls themselves. Your ancestors were wise to encode the command frequencies into their bloodline. My ancestors were apparently also crazy enough to think hiding a fleet of super weapons was a good idea, Mac muttered. Oh, they were definitely crazy, Pip agreed, hovering nearby and somehow managing to look impressed despite being a maintenance bot. But crazy like a fox wearing a disco suit, Daddy-o, check out these ship manifests. The display showed the composition of the Ghost Fleet, and Mac's eyes widened as he read the specifications. The smallest vessels were the size of battleships, while the largest could probably use moons as ammunition. But more interesting were the names. The Overwhelming Hugger? Mac read aloud. The Friendship Cannon? The Aggressive Cuddler? The builders had a sense of humor, Admiral Nexus explained. They believed that the greatest weapons were those that could end conflicts without destroying the combatants. Each ship in the Ghost Fleet is equipped with what they called pacification technology. What's pacification technology? Zara asked, studying a display showing weapon systems that looked like they belonged in a children's cartoon. I'll demonstrate. One of the smaller ships, designated as the Gentle Persuader, moved into view. Mac watched as it extended what looked like massive metallic arms. The Gentle Persuader specializes in restraining enemy vessels without causing permanent damage. Its primary weapon system is designed to embrace hostile ships until they agree to negotiate. It hugs them into submission? Mac asked. Essentially, yes. Mac was beginning to understand why the builders had vanished. Any civilization advanced enough to turn aggressive cuddling into a military strategy had probably transcended the need for physical existence. Commander Thompson, Admiral Nexus continued, we have intercepted communications indicating that the Crithani Empire has begun their assault on the peaceful species. The Meditation Federation's homeworld is under siege. Mac looked at the tactical display showing the Crithani fleet advancing on a planet whose primary exports were apparently inner peace and really good herbal tea. How many ships do they have? Approximately 500 vessels of various classes. And how many do we have? 10,437. Those 17 are currently offline due to what appears to be a ship-wide meditation retreat that's been going on for 3 millennia. Zara whistled. Those are pretty good odds. The numerical advantage is significant. Admiral Nexus agreed. However, the fleet will only respond to direct commands from the chosen translator. Every maneuver, every tactical decision, every target designation must be communicated in ancient primordial. Mac felt the familiar sensation of impending doom settling in his stomach. So if I tell you to attack, and I accidentally use the wrong conjugation, what happens? Well, last time someone mispronounced a command in ancient primordial, the entire 7th Fleet spent 6 months flying in circles while playing what your species would call tag. That's actually not as bad as I expected. They were supposed to be evacuating refugees from a collapsing star system at the time. And there's the catch, Mac sighed. An alert chimed through the command center, and Admiral Nexus's voice took on an urgent tone. Commander, we're receiving a distress signal from the Meditation Federation. Their planetary defense consists of strongly worded letters and aggressive passive resistance. They won't last long against Krithani firepower. Mac looked at the tactical display, then at Zara, who was watching him with an expression of barely contained amusement. You know, she said, most people would kill for the chance to command a fleet like this. Most people haven't seen my track record with translation, Mac replied. I once told a Centauri diplomat that his wife was a beautiful horse. It was supposed to be a compliment about her strength and grace. How did that go? Interstellar incident. 3 months of negotiations. The Centauri still send me pictures of actual horses on my birthday. Pip bobbed over to hover next to Mac's shoulder. Look, Cat, I know you're scared of messing up again. But sometimes the universe needs someone who's willing to make mistakes. The builders didn't choose your bloodline because you were perfect. They chose you because you were human. What's that supposed to mean? Humans are the only species in the galaxy that can be completely wrong about something and still somehow stumble into the right answer. It's like your superpower. Mac looked around the command center, at the displays showing 10,000 ships waiting for his orders, at the distress signals from species he'd never heard of, at the tactical readouts showing the Krithani Empire spreading across the galaxy like a particularly aggressive rash. All right, he said, taking a deep breath. Admiral Nexus, prepare the fleet for deployment. And somebody find me a crash course in military tactics, because I have a feeling we're about to find out exactly how much damage good intentions and bad pronunciation can do to the space-time continuum. Groovy, Pip said. This is going to be far out, man. Mac really wished he could share the bot's optimism. The Ghost Fleet's approach to the Meditation Federation's homeworld was, Mac had to admit, pretty spectacular. 10,000 ships dropping out of hyperspace simultaneously created a light show that probably violated several laws of physics and at least one noise ordinance. The Krithani fleet, which had been in the middle of demanding surrender from a planet whose military consisted of strongly worded peace treaties, suddenly found themselves facing odds that made lottery tickets look like sure bets. Krithani Command Vessel, this is Admiral Nexus of the Ghost Fleet. You are ordered to cease hostilities and withdraw from Federation space immediately. The response came in the form of several hundred plasma torpedoes, which was pretty much what Mac had expected from a species that considered pleas to be a sign of weakness. Well, Mac said, watching the tactical display as the Krithani fleet moved into attack formation, I guess we're doing this the hard way. Commander, Admiral Nexus said, the fleet awaits your orders. Mac looked at the ancient primordial phrase book that Pip had somehow managed to compile from the ship's databases. The words for attack and formation seemed straightforward enough, but then again, everything seemed straightforward until he opened his mouth. All right, Ghost Fleet, let's try this. Form up in, He squinted at the text, trying to make sure he had the pronunciation right. Keth tar nol vashan mordun. There was a moment of silence. Then Admiral Nexus spoke in what Mac was learning to recognize as his diplomatically confused voice. Commander, did you just order the fleet to Embrace the enemy vessels with aggressive affection. Mac looked down at the phrase book, then back at the tactical display, where the Ghost Fleet was indeed moving to surround the Crethani ships in what looked like the galaxy's most threatening group hug. I meant to say attack formation Alpha, Max said weakly. You said aggressive hugging maneuver Delta, Pip translated helpfully. Though to be fair, the pronunciation was spot on. Can we abort? Change the order? The fleet is already committed to the maneuver, Admiral Nexus replied. However, I should point out that the aggressive hugging maneuver is actually one of our most effective tactics. Mac watched in fascination as the Ghost Fleet's ships extended massive mechanical arms and began literally embracing the Crethani vessels. The smaller enemy ships were completely enveloped, while the larger ones found themselves locked in the grip of what appeared to be cosmic-scale teddy bears. This is ridiculous, Zara said, but she was grinning as she watched the tactical display. They're actually hugging them into submission. The Crethani fleet's response was about what you'd expect from a warrior culture being aggressively cuddled by ships the size of small cities. Their weapons fire became increasingly frantic and less coordinated as they tried to figure out how to fight an enemy that was trying to give them a really enthusiastic hug. Commander Thompson, Admiral Nexus said, I'm receiving surrender requests from several Crethani vessels. They appear to be confused and emotionally overwhelmed. Emotionally overwhelmed? The aggressive hugging maneuver activates the ship's empathy fields. The enemy crews are being flooded with feelings of friendship and an overwhelming desire to resolve conflicts through peaceful negotiation. Max stared at the tactical display, where Crethani ships were beginning to power down their weapons and extend what appeared to be small white flags made of energy. So you're telling me that the most advanced fleet in galactic history fights by making the enemy feel bad about being mean? The builders believed that most conflicts arose from a lack of understanding and compassion. The Ghost Fleet's primary function is to forcibly induce empathy in hostile forces. That's Max searched for words. That's the most terrifying thing I've ever heard. It's also remarkably effective, Admiral Nexus pointed out. The Crethani flagship is requesting immediate peace negotiations. Their commander appears to be crying. On the main display, Mac could see the massive Crethani dreadnought being gently held by 3 Ghost Fleet vessels while its hull displayed messages in multiple languages. All variations of "We're sorry, please don't hurt us, we just want to go home." This is Admiral Vextar of the Crethani Empire, came a transmission from the enemy flagship. The voice was shaky and punctuated by what sounded like sniffling. We formally request an immediate ceasefire. Our weapons are powered down and we're very sorry about the whole war thing. We didn't realize how much it would hurt people's feelings. Zara looked at Mac with an expression of pure delight. You accidentally conquered the most aggressive military force in the galaxy by making them feel guilty about being mean. Commander, Admiral Nexus continued, I should inform you that the aggressive hugging maneuver was actually the Ghost Fleet's intended first response to the Crethani threat. The builders predicted that a species so focused on warfare would be completely unprepared for an opponent that fought with overwhelming compassion. So this was supposed to happen? The mistranslation was accidental, but the result was precisely what the builders intended. Sometimes the best way to end a war is to make everyone involved realize how silly the whole thing was in the first place. Mac looked around the command center, then at the tactical display showing the entire Crethani fleet surrendering to what was essentially a group hug from spaceships with feelings. I have the strangest feeling, he said, that my career as a translator is about to get a lot more complicated. Groovy, Pip said. Wait until you see what happens when you try to order a tactical retreat. Mac decided he didn't want to know. 6 months after the Battle of Aggressive Affection, as historians were calling it, Mac found himself sitting in the same conference room where his career as a translator had imploded. The difference was that now he was the one running the meeting, and the various alien diplomats were all being very, very polite to him. So he said, looking around the table at representatives from 17 different species, let's start with the Crethani integration report. Admiral Vextar, the former Crethani fleet commander, raised a tentacle. He'd been a very different person since his encounter with the Ghost Fleet's empathy fields, developing what his species psychologists called chronic consideration for others. The transition to peaceful coexistence has been challenging, he admitted. My warriors keep apologizing to their targets before engaging in combat exercises. Yesterday, our elite shock troops spent 3 hours helping an elderly Centauri woman cross the street. That sounds like progress, Max said diplomatically. It is, but it's also very confusing for everyone involved. We've had to completely redesign our military training to include conflict resolution and anger management. Do you know how hard it is to teach a Krithani berserker to use their inside voice? Zara, who now held the official title of Deputy Commander of Cosmic Peacekeeping and the unofficial title of person who keeps Mac from accidentally conquering more star systems, leaned forward. What about the reparations program? She asked. Montet. We've established meditation retreats on all the worlds we previously threatened, Vextar replied. Our warriors are providing free therapeutic services to anyone affected by our aggressive expansion. It's actually quite popular. Who knew that species across the galaxy had so much unresolved emotional trauma? The builders would be proud, Admiral Nexus observed from the conference room's speakers. They believed that true strength came from helping others heal. Mac nodded and made a note on his tablet. The Ghost Fleet had been busy over the past 6 months, responding to conflicts across the galaxy with their unique brand of aggressive compassion. Wars were being ended through mandatory group therapy sessions, territorial disputes were being resolved with collective art projects, and interstellar trade negotiations were being conducted through interpretive dance competitions. What's the status on the PIP situation? Mac asked. Back, Supreme Admiral of Friendship reporting for duty. Pip announced, zooming into the conference room with what appeared to be a small cape attached to his chassis. The interfleet dance competition is proceeding groovily, Commander. The Eternal Harmony is currently in the lead with their interpretation of the Macarena, though the Gentle Persuader's disco routine is a close second. Pip, Mac said carefully, you do realize that Supreme Admiral of Friendship isn't a real military rank, right? It is now, Cat. The Ghost Fleet voted unanimously to make it official. I'm in charge of morale, recreational activities, and making sure everyone gets along. It's the most important job in the fleet. He's actually quite good at it, Admiral Nexus admitted. Fleet cohesion has improved dramatically since he started organizing the dance-offs. Mac rubbed his temples. What about the translation incidents? Well, Zara said, consulting her own tablet, last week you accidentally ordered the fleet to serenely tickle a pirate stronghold instead of strategically disable it. The pirates are now operating a comedy club and seem much happier with their career choices. And the week before that, you tried to order a reconnaissance mission but actually sent the scouts to complement the local architecture. The planet you were investigating is now a major tourist destination because everyone wants to see the buildings that made a galactic peacekeeping force write poetry. Max sighed. I used to think the worst thing I could do was accidentally start a war. Now I'm accidentally solving galaxy-wide problems through linguistic incompetence. It's working, though, Ambassador Valara pointed out. She'd been reinstated as Chief Diplomatic Officer after the Ghost Fleet's success, and was now Mac's official liaison to the Galactic Diplomatic Corps. Violent crime is down 70% in sectors where the Ghost Fleet has been active. Peace treaties are being signed faster than we can process them. And 3 separate species have declared you their spiritual leader. They declared me what now? The philosophical collective of deep thinkers believes you're the reincarnation of their founder because you accidentally ordered the fleet to contemplate the cosmic significance of really good sandwich construction during a hostage situation. Did it work? Man. The hostage takers released their prisoners and opened a chain of interstellar delicatessens. Their sandwiches are apparently transcendent. Mac looked around the conference room at the various alien diplomats, all of whom were smiling at him with expressions ranging from amusement to genuine admiration. 6 months ago, he'd been a failed translator whose biggest achievement was accidentally starting a war. Now he was commanding a fleet of 10,000 ships, ending conflicts across the galaxy, and apparently inspiring universal peace through the strategic application of linguistic disasters. Commander Admiral Nexus said, "We're receiving reports of a territorial dispute in the Outer Rim. The Crystalline Confederacy and the Gaseous Collective are arguing over mining rights to an asteroid field." "All right," Mac said, standing up and straightening his uniform. "Let's go see what kind of beautiful disaster we can make out of this one." "Any predictions on what you'll accidentally order this time?" Zara asked, grinning. Mac looked at his ancient primordial phrase book, then at the expectant faces around the conference table. Somewhere out there, 2 alien civilizations were probably preparing for war over space rocks, completely unaware that their conflict was about to be resolved by a human who couldn't properly order lunch in a dead language. "Knowing my luck," he said, "I'll probably end up turning them into a folk-singing duo or something equally ridiculous." "Far out," Pip said. "I'll start working on the choreography." As the Ghost Fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Mac couldn't help but reflect on how his life had changed. He'd gone from being the worst translator in the Galactic Diplomatic Corps to being the commander of the most powerful peacekeeping force in the galaxy. He was still terrible at his job, but somehow that seemed to be exactly what the universe needed. After all, in a galaxy full of beings who took themselves too seriously, sometimes it took someone who could accidentally order a fleet of warships to express their feelings through interpretive dance to remind everyone what really mattered. The Ghost Fleet jumped to hyperspace, ready to spread peace, love, and cosmic confusion throughout the galaxy. And Mac, the accidental commander of the most dangerous fleet in history, wouldn't have it any other way. Even if he still had no idea what he was doing,